Scale Up Show. This is your host, Ryan Staley, and I have a very special guest with me today. I have Matt Ellis. Matt is the founder and CEO of Measurabl, which is the world's most widely adopted ESG environment, social governance, data management solution for commercial real estate. Real estate, not real estate. He also just recently wrote the book, From Green to ESG. Matt, welcome, man. Happy to have you on the show.
Hey, Ryan. Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, dude. And I'm excited to carve this up with you because you have a really unique offering. I love how you kind of crafted your company with hitting on different areas from the data to the solution to the SaaS. So, but before we get into all that, let's go through a real quick revenue rundown. So, can you give me an idea on the revenue range that you guys are at right now?
Yeah, Ryan, we're a growth stage company. Think of Series D, well in excess of 15 million in annual recurring revenue. And we employ over 200 people, raised over $85 million in venture capital across about 4 rounds.
Wow, it's a lot, man. It's a lot. So, good, congrats on that. And then, can you talk about your solution a little bit, just so that folks have some context about what you do and who you serve and how you do it?
Yeah, you got it. Measurable is a technology company specifically focused on ESG in real estate. So we're a vertical play in the real estate industry. It's the world's largest asset class, so it's a big market for us to address. And the technology platform that we offer consists of four things. One is our flagship software product. Think of it as a giant sort of Salesforce or ERP system for enterprise measurement, management, and disclosure of ESG. We offer a real-time data product for building optimization, energy efficiency. We offer a pure data product, which is an API-based service for real estate capital markets. So real estate lenders, insurers, ratings agencies, that like. And then we have a professional services layer that spans across all three of those technology services.
Awesome. Well, we're gonna dig deep into all those later because it's like I said, it's really unique in terms of how that's structured, and I could see how it kind of progressed that way. But I'd love to hear your story. However, before we get into that, what about your book too? I know you just recently released that as well. What's that about exactly?
The book is about, so from green to ESG, right? How data transformed the real estate industry for good. Double entendre on good, not just environmentally and socially more responsible, but for more durable and profitable results in the long term. And so the book is about this transition from kind of like the marketing veneer, sustainability as a badge on my shirt sleeves, sort of virtue signaling, to a hard financial environment, regulated environment where you need to have control over the fundamentals of your business, no different than you would over profit and loss. So it's just about how we made that transition and why that transition is fundamentally positive for the industry.
Awesome. How long did it take you to write that?
I think that's really, the book is an assemblage of like all the blogs and articles and stuff I've written over the last 10 years. So we kind of just went through all of that and put the themes together and then just did a quick rewrite on top of it.
Nice. Well, that's a smart way to do it. Well, you kind of build while you're going along versus the painstaking process of doing a massive book that
Yep.
you're starting from scratch on day one. So,
Yep.
love that. So, how did you get here? Like, obviously to raise that amount of money, 85 mil, you're a 200 person company. Sounds like you're approaching multiple eight figures. Like, what was the story in terms of how you got here, what you went through, and we just love to hear that kind of backstory.
So Measurable came out of my experience at CBRE. CBRE is the world's largest real estate services company. And I actually started there in 2008. An amazing time to get into the real estate business. As you guys recall, 2008 was the Great Financial Crisis, the GFC. And I started there as a real estate broker. And when I was out looking for tenants to represent their lease transactions with landlords, I was literally knocking door to door in industrial parks in East County, San Diego. Gave me a lot of time to think because most of those doors were closed and didn't want anything to do with me. And I remember stopping one time in front of a building. It was really hot in the middle of summer, and I was lingering under the awning in the shade, and I saw this decal on the door. It said Energy Star Certified. And I kind of thought, what does that mean? And, why is that there? What does the tenant or the landlord care about Energy Star? And so I went back to my office that day in an attempt to kind of look busy for my bosses. I Googled Energy Star certification. And that's where I first learned about the idea of green building. And I have personally an interest in sustainability. And so I never thought that my personal interest and my professional life could come together. But it turns out green building was a phenomenon in real estate. And so I pursued that thread and ultimately over a period of time became the director of sustainability solutions for CBRE, which is a corporate entrepreneurial job. So before I was an entrepreneur, I still worked under the shade of the big oak tree, developing new services and businesses for CB around energy and sustainability. Taught me two things. One, there was an enormous transition underway in the economy from traditional business models to sustainable business models. That was going to disproportionately impact the real estate asset class because it's the largest and it's one of the most environmentally and socially impactful. 40% of the carbon is coming from our buildings, for example. Second thing was we couldn't measure it. So I wanted to build a technology approach to helping our customers make this transition, and that's where the idea for Measurable came from.
Ah, okay. So, like, what was the specific point in time where you're like, I guess, like, how did you make the transition? You know, it's good. I love that you're an entrepreneur, and CBRE is a big company, a big beast, right? And what are they, 40 billion in revenue, maybe 80 billion in revenue? I mean, they're massive. And so I guess my question is like, at what specific point in time did you know in your heart, like, hey, there's something here, and I gotta do this?
Well, I reached conviction over a period of like, say, a couple of years of
Okay.
doing this discussion with our customers, and they're saying, yeah, I'm seeing this trend, I'm seeing this transition. I think it actually might be kind of almost existential for our business. I'm seeing regulation emerge. So I knew there was a market forming up, and I saw a big opportunity. But the moment that I left to pursue it was almost just I presented a business plan. I said, look, to the company, to CBRE, I believe very strongly that we have the opportunity to be the winner in the green revolution. We're already the biggest property company on the planet.
Right.
Come on, this is going to change how every property operates, how debt and equity moves, and we need to do it using technology. And they said no. So I was left with I have two choices: take that lump, on the chin and carry on with my day job, or say respectfully, I'd like to go pursue this, and I did the latter.
That's awesome. So I'm sure they're probably regretting not taking you up on that.
Well,
A.
they were great. Let me, for the record, they signed the intellectual property over to me. They supported some of their senior executives who were bullish on the idea, became early angel investors. They became our first customer. Today, one of our
Oh,
largest
nice. Okay.
customers. So it's been, it's just every business, if you're a property services company, you can understand from their perspective, well, we don't build startups, right? That
Right.
wasn't their DNA. And so, while it may, in retrospect, seem like something that they could have done, everybody beats their own drum. That's okay.
Yeah. Well, it could be they're trying to stay in their own swim lane. I could see what you're saying with that. So I guess, like, how did you make it a reality then? Because if your background is door to door, obviously you have higher level vision with what you're talking about being an entrepreneur. How did you turn it into software? How did you find? Do you have a co-founder, or did you hire a CTO right away? I mean, like, how did you turn it into tech? I guess.
Yeah, just those couple first little moves. I mean, so I knew enough to know that I didn't know a lot. I was a real estate professional, not a technologist. But look, I just turned 40. We are that crossover generation. We kind of get what apps should look like. There's just an intuition that I think our generation, and certainly those that came after us, are have natively that our forefathers didn't. So I started playing around with Balsamic, which is a wireframe mockup. I sort of said, this is what I think the experience ought to look like. And as a subject matter expert, I knew how to calculate carbon and what the real estate day job was. So I could get it to there. I talked a lot with a great friend of mine, Lance Onken from college, who became our CTO. And he was going, look, this is what agile software methodologies are. He was talking to me about the concepts of a technology business. Another great friend of mine, Dave Schumann, who was our first back-end engineer, I gave him a check for, I think it was about $80. He had volunteered to build our first proof of concept, this little data ingestion Java widget. So it was sort of like talking to my friends who had domain experience on the technology side and iterating. Very Eric Ries, I know you're a fan of business books, so Eric Ries, minimum viable product and lean startup and all. So I believed in that methodology and I was able to test those concepts for really relatively low bucks. I took that proof of concept, that wireframe, and then got a contract software developer to kind of build it into a little more of an experience. And that was where I got the validation that yes, there's there, and I got my first revenues.
Okay. Love that. So you leveraged your personal network, and then you went to a contractor. How much did your MVP cost to build then once you
Yeah,
went to that contractor?
I want to say it was we probably get 20 to 30 grand to kind of
Okay.
get that first thing out the door that was workable. That was the next iteration of that $80 proof of
Yeah,
concept.
$80 to
Concept, yeah,
20K, right? A little
yeah,
bit of a jump.
little jump, yeah.
Um, and did you just self-fund that then initially, or did you
Yes,
have some angel investors from?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Good for you, man. Way to make that jump. Because that like that's a question that I always think about for myself as well. Is like, I have a sales background, I have deep domain expertise, but then there's a technical aspect, right? And I've seen it the other way too. I've talked to technical founders that have no sales experience, and it's just it's a they're two totally different skill sets, being like deep technical experience and then having really strong sales expertise and marketing expertise. So
It's something to talk a lot about. I have my experience, but I've seen technical founders, right? And I've seen sort of more sales or business founders. And probably if you're the unicorn and you have both of those, you're in great shape. On balance, though, for what it's worth, I would rather have the sales business side. And the reason is this: it's astonishing in the early build of the business how little the product can matter. What matters is establishing the vision and the narrative and the increments, the value inflection points to allow you to get funding and adoption traction. The product will never be perfect. And I think the engineer's tendency is to try to build the thing, right? And its ultimate perfection, and forget that like it doesn't matter if you're not going to get any revenue or any, at least, early adopters or any of that stuff. So that's probably a totally biased statement, but at least it was my personal experience.
I mean, I'll go with it. I come from a sales background, so I'll go with it, man. I have no problem with that. But yeah, like there's so many. This is interesting. I told you, I think in this show warm up, I've talked to about 40 different founders over the last 4 months, probably more than that now. And one of the interesting things is like there was Nathan Beckford, I believe it was Beckford or Bedford. I'm having a brain fart. But his SaaS is actually around helping founders get funding. And I'm like, okay, well, walk me through like the exact framework to do that. And he just described a sales process. I'm like, okay. Another um, gentleman as well founded a company, and his partner led go to market motion, and it was exactly a sales process. So even though they're called different things, sales and marketing is integrated in pretty much everything that you do. So I get where you're saying with that. It
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense.
The ultimate power of like developing a funnel, qualifying that funnel, converting, like it is effective in so many aspects of the overall business, right? You see those same principles showing up even in your technology build, right? It's like rapid iteration, release of code, qualify, validate with customer, rinse, repeat, expand. Like, there's sort of this. I'm just really a believer in that iterative process. So long as you know the macro vision or outcome, like I need to raise $5 million and here's why, so
Hmm.
that your iterations actually add up to that $5 million by the time you
Yeah,
land
exactly.
it.
And you back into it.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's funny. I even saw a woman apply it. She was divorced and she applied it to relationships, like finding her next. She had like a funnel of dating candidates that she
sure,
was going through,
sure, that
which
makes sense.
sounds ridiculous, but it kind of makes sense. If you have a short timeline, of
She
the
must
only
have been
time I've ever seen that, but whatever.
probably a great salesperson. Yeah.
She was actually. So let's progress a little bit. Okay, so I want to get in a little bit about the structure of your company and why you set it up that way, and then I want to get like, what are you doing to grow? Because if you're at that Series D level, you're doing some amazing things. Because most companies don't make it there. So how did you decide to have, right, the kind of the three layers that you described with the PS wrapper around it, and
Hmm.
I'm assuming that happened gradually,
Yep.
but maybe, I mean, you sound like pretty good with vision, so maybe that was your
Yep.
vision all along, but love to hear your take on that.
Well, yeah, the vision was it's one thing that I think Measurable did pretty well was we were able to articulate an ultimate vision of, we say, addressing ESG from meter to market. What that
Hmm.
means is basically saying we're going to deal with all the implications of this revolution around sustainability at every level of the entire real estate experience, whether you're buying and selling buildings or leasing them, or you're some giant pension fund investing $5 billion into a bunch of asset managers, general partners. Like we were going to be everywhere. And we said that and said that since the beginning and have stuck to it. Now, what we didn't say was, well, what's the product that you deliver against that vision? The first move was naturally was SaaS, but again, I just talked about how even there we were iterating and assuming and hypothesis testing that was in fact true. It would be very reasonable to say you should build a consulting company at that time that we did that too, right? There are two products that you could have brought against the requirement. And I think when you look at Measurable, that distinction between a vision and how you solution it is really important, right? Don't assume the solution, define the problem. So when
Hmm.
you see Measurable, then we brought the SaaS product out. It worked better. It started to scale. It could scale very substantially, which is one of the big hurdles in prop tech is scale. It's one of the hardest industries we've seen out there to get from one building to 100,000 buildings. And so we wanted to make sure we could do that. Once we had that, we had two things. One, an engine of revenue. Two, a data set. The engine of revenue allowed us to continue to fund the business and make it something attractive to, obviously grow. The data allowed us to leverage it and create new insights that were proprietary to us. So you couldn't just build software and get them. Uh, and to expand the remit of the platform into these other areas that the data told us the customer needed help on, like making the building better. So the second part of it was this real-time data management, decarbonization, building optimization solution, and packing that into the overall platform. So again, the product vision always laid it out, always said we needed something there to make the building better, but it didn't specify what that necessarily looked like until several years into the business. And then the third product that we offer, this data product, again, we were finding that the other real estate stakeholders who we said we wanted to address, real estate capital markets, they couldn't consume a UI based product. That wasn't really what they wanted. But they did want to put an address in and understand the sustainability performance of a building so they could underwrite the loan. So that looks very different. So it took us a couple of years moving from that core SaaS engine and the data insights to figure out how to repackage that data and how to expand that SaaS experience.
That makes sense. And I think it's fascinating. So, like, you said it took a few years. What tipped you off? Were you getting approached and having organizations ask for it? Or eventually you started to look at the data, you're like, holy shit, this is amazing. Like I guess like where was that kind of epiphany and how did that happen?
You've got a mixture, so it depends on market maturity. So as this issue of ESG matured over the last decade, the ask of the customer became much more specific and well defined as well. So in the beginning of a market, when you think about like first mover, blue water, blue ocean, right? Harvard
Blue
Business School,
Ocean,
blue
yep.
ocean
Yep.
markets, high risk, high reward. It's unbounded. It's not well defined. The product market fit is not established. There's no incumbent in the space to say, oh, I can do what they do, but do it better. It's literally we think software with workflows around investor reporting or data automation will work here. So you go into that. Now you have high reward as a result. You can get big piece of the market and all the other advantages. So as that market matures, though, it's not so. You can sort of see over the horizon. People are starting to say the same things in the same way. And if any product manager is out listening to this, this is that job, right? Of distilling the customer's voice into a coherent narrative and then productizing against that. So that was happening as we're going. There were also some bets we just made. Like our core software product was a fun, straight up a bet. It was first mover. There was nothing out there like it. And then our data product today is totally first mover. There's nothing like it. But if you pay attention and you go, I think where this should go is these capital markets players should need this data. They're probably not going to log into a UI, but we can hypothesis test that.
Mm-hmm.
You can find
Yeah.
your way with those breadcrumbs.
Yeah. I love that. And it makes a lot of sense. And I get what you're saying where, yeah, with the market maturity, how the asks get way more specific as you kind of go through time. It's just like, oh, sweet, you could do this. Now it's like, okay, sweet, you could
Totally.
do this. We want it in this exact way, in this exact time frame, in this exact
And
measurement.
it's we're talking a lot about product, but it also is the case with the business model, right? So like, let's just pick like a super mature market, like grocery stores or something, right? Like exactly what your apple should cost. It's totally transparent. You know that you should be selling apples both individually a la carte and by the bundle, right? And on we can go with the analogy. And business looks the same way in mature markets. It's like the widget should very specifically be this. It should very specifically cost this, and I should be able to buy one or many and get economies of scale when I do so. ESG was not that way, right? It is increasingly looking more like the grocery store, but we probably have another decade before we get to that level of maturity.
Hmm.
We're somewhere in between.
Well, so, and you don't have to share this if you're not comfortable, but like now with the stage you're at, like what's the percentage of revenue for the different products? Like, I guess, is your original SaaS product still the bulk of it, or
Yeah,
is it
yeah,
changed?
that thing's a beast. It's the longest living thing. A lot of our other products are, launched even as recently. Like the data product was launched just in Q1.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, totally. It's brand new, very novel, but man, I wish our core business looked like that when it got going. Like that thing is off on a tear. It has advantages. We already have a brand. We're
Right.
selling into an ecosystem that already recognizes us, and we could already validate a lot of their needs through the core product experience. So like I wonder if there's something to that, but it's just like subsequent product releases should leverage the core insights of the mothership, and
Hmm.
you should have less risk and higher and faster reward, which is what we've seen in our business. Otherwise, you haven't learned anything from your domain. If you're
Yeah.
just throwing crap against the wall and it's not sticking, then you're not paying attention to your core business.
Yeah. No, I love that, man. That's a really great distinction. So, what's your biggest challenge right now then, as you're growing and at the stage you're at? What's the single biggest challenge that you're running into in terms of growing revenue?
Our biggest, we have two. One is a product one, and one is a geographic one. So the the we're talking about a market that still is maturing. It's not mature, and what that means as a product is you have a lot of investment in adapting to the new metrics, the new models, the new frameworks, the new regulations, the new workflows, et cetera, and changing priorities around all that. So if you have a mature and stable market, you don't have to invest as much as we do in product and engineering to simply adjust, to skate to where the puck is, sort of thing.
Hmm.
So that's something that affects everybody that plays in the space. And our business response to that is we'll just be the most well funded and the most dynamic in terms of engineering and technology. Like our whole business, unlike our competitive set, was software first, technology first, not consulting first, for example. So we always had the DNA to change the code to adapt to changing market circumstances. With respect to the geography piece, what's happened is sustainability in real estate came out of Europe. It was actually catalyzed by major Dutch pension funds, APG, PGGM, who did us all a great service by saying this matters.
Hmm.
And so that market started. It then bled into the states, North America, and you're seeing it move. Australia, sort of anglophone countries. Now you're seeing it move into Asia, and you're like, okay, here's something that we need to deal with. I've got to run a business that addresses our customers' needs, who are global customers in many instances. Capital moves globally, but I have to address them in all these places that ESG is an issue. So you've got language translation. I guess I'm back on a product issue now, but language translation and other GDPR compliance issues. But you also have the staffing and the marketing, the support for that customer in Berlin versus Hong Kong. So those are all just real big operational matters to deal with.
What about like what's your go-to-market though? Like what's your approach to growing revenue?
Well, so it's we have three growth strategies. They're probably going to sound incredibly obvious, but we make sure to differentiate the product. So what that means is basically have novel functionality. We have a couple things that we do that no one else can even touch. So we're all playing catch up. We have integrated multiple credit bureaus for physical climate risk. We have TurboTax style investor reporting for ESG. Um, and we want to continue to find those novel, innovative features and functionality. Second thing is grow globally, and that's about support and staffing for the customer in Hong Kong, like I said, versus Berlin.
Hmm.
Third one, probably the most interesting one, is address the different segments of the real estate business. And this is where I still feel like Measurable has been very clear from day one, and I'm surprised that people don't see real estate as a heterogeneous ecosystem of different stakeholders who must be served differently. So a
Hmm.
real estate lender is not the same as a real estate owner, is not the same as a real estate investor, a pension fund, or a high net worth individual. So the growth strategy of the business, those are the three things that to grow the company. The go to market is to make sure, do you have the product to address those things differently, appropriately? Are you on time, on budget when you deliver that? And then do you have a sales motion that comports to that end segment? So selling to a Bloomberg or an MSCI or a S&P Gold is not the same sell with the same personality type or deliverables that you would take to a property manager.
Oh yeah, it's completely different. It's like an SMB motion versus an enterprise motion.
Totally, absolutely.
So are you running into challenges with that, like segmenting the team so that they're
Yeah.
focused and talent is
Yeah,
aligned
it's
with
I
it?
mean, you do it. That's the job, right? The job is, as the business grows and becomes more complicated in terms of its product offering and the different segments it addresses, what do you see naturally happen? Segmentation is the word of the day. So you're seeing us specialize around geographies and customer segments, intersecting that with the product offering. So how do you take that product offering to those geographies or end customer segments?
Right.
So you're seeing more sales engineering. You're seeing more enterprise account executive type roles, bigger playbooks, that type of stuff.
Right. Right. Okay. That's kind of what I anticipated based on
Yep.
some of the companies you were talking about before. So what would you say is like, it sounds like you're doing some pretty cool things with like the novel ideas, growing globally, and then like segmentation, in the real estate markets and the buyers, right? So, but I guess like if you had a framework of what you have seen grow your organization the best, would love to hear what you think is like the single best thing that you guys have done when it comes to your sales motion or it comes to your revenue motion, to make that a reality.
I'll try to take a tack that may not be as often repeated because I think there's a lot of agreement around what it is to do a expert software sale, depending on whether B2B, B2C, et cetera, enterprise or otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
What I think we have done very well is take the narrative and product vision and the growth strategies I just went through and beat that into every individual in the company, whether they be an account executive responsible for new sales or an account manager responsible for the growth of the existing customer or the innovation engine of the business. I make sure that everybody understands and can repeat those growth strategies and that product vision. So that way, when they go and show up in front of a prospect, that we are so consistent and everyone is always singing from that same sheet of music that I find it has a compounding effect. And what I mean is this: maybe I only do real estate. So I don't know about other industries, but I suspect people talk in industries. And I suspect that a lot of the enterprise and the big sales are references. And when you can be consistent from deal to deal in what you're saying, you're promising, delivering, I think that has a lot of value and it compounds over time. And it turns into what we would call a highly distinguished brand, not just product platform. And so I think that that makes our life a lot easier. One more thing I can say about it is it makes the job clear. We don't, all of our people can know exactly what their role in the organization is against those three growth strategies. So it eliminates confusion, waste time.
So you pound the vision, right? You create that consistency. You create deep referenceable clients because it's consistent, and then it compounds into a really strong brand.
Yes, and
Those are
then
the
continue to
four.
deliver against that.
Yeah, yeah, and then rinse and repeat, right?
Yeah.
So have you systemized customer to prospect referrals then?
Um, that's a good question. I would say we're pretty darn close. We like actively work with our existing customers to talk about being a reference customer, if that's what you're getting at. We do customer marketing, so we know, and as part of the sale and the onboarding process, we're setting out success criteria that we can document and then take to the customer and say, did what we all agreed we were going to do, with the expectation that we could talk about it publicly and create case studies, right? That are mutually beneficial, by the way, because they have stakeholders that they need to prove what they're up to as well. So I think we want to both set that expectation. We're in this together. Positive outcomes are positive for us both. And we do that early in the process, not as a surprise. We think it went well. We'd love to do this ad hoc.
Okay, good man. Well, we're just about up on time, and I love spending the half hour with you. I think you're doing some amazing things. I just love the vision that you have, and it's really unique with the way you approach the business. So I can see why you guys are doing well. So let's do a real quick founder fire rundown. What's the favorite book you've read before? Your favorite book?
I Oh well, I'll keep it on topic, which is the Lean Startup by Eric Ries. I used it earlier. Just please read the
Okay.
first chapter. Please read the first chapter, everybody. That's all you have to know about iterative business development.
Okay, love that. Who's your favorite founder or CEO that you look up to, admire, appreciate what they're doing right now?
You Okay? That's a good one. And by the way, I probably should have said my own book, but I wasn't going to do that in the last one. Um,
You can't. Yeah, it's hard to promote. You're like, I'm
you
the
can't
best.
do that, right?
Yeah,
You
right.
can't do that.
It's like coming up with your own nickname, right? You can't do that.
Yeah, no. Satya Nadella comes out, and it's kind of weird. I really respect today professionalism and leadership. I want to compare and contrast. I was just complaining this morning to my brother about Elon Musk, who I respect tremendously for his genius and innovative spirit, but I'm annoyed at the amateur presentation of that to the markets, and I just wish he could grow up. And I think that there are these professionals out there that are showing us what distinguished leadership looks like, and results, and vision.
Mhm.
And I think he's one fine example.
Okay, love that. Yeah, there's a guest. It probably hasn't aired by the time. Well, it probably would have aired by the time. Another CEO that I had on. His name is Ed Rossich. He's actually had 7 exits and created like 3 billion in exits. And
Amazing.
he's this insane. He talks a lot about leadership and like a leadership operating system that he implemented. It's really fascinating. So great episode. Uh, and that's just what I thought of because I talked to him I
You
think
got to
last
put that
week.
in the
So
corner of the video, right? Click here for that episode.
yeah, click here. So anyways, and then where do you see the future of tech going? Like where do you see in the next 5 years or so, tech, SaaS, and the environment? You can even weave in the environment there, man.
Well, I'm going to stay in my lane on this one, right? So what I can say is I do think clearly digitalization is running rampant against the great industries out there, real estate being probably the last sitting duck for digitalization. And what I mean by that is thinking about not just transitioning manual process to technology processes, but I'm thinking about the transition once you've done that, taking the data and turning that into an asset that's proprietary for the business. I think that's an enormous mega trend that has to be observed, and that's where you're going to find actual durable value created. I think that um, the sustainability and environmental movement, a lot of people, I think the majority of people think that that conundrum is about some hardware widget thing that allows us to suck carbon out of the air or the better light bulb or something like that. I don't agree whatsoever with this. I think that technology in climate all exists, solar panels and so on and so forth, to decarbonize. I think the missing ingredient is measurement. And this is where I will do a plug for our own business. It's so strange to me that the environmental and social impacts of business, we all jumped over accurate and measurements and transparency of that and letting markets work on that. I think we went over too far to the solution. We skipped the problem. We went to the solution, and we said, here's a widget, and here's a widget. And no one bothered to say, well, don't we already have really efficient light bulbs, LEDs? Don't we already have fancy building envelope technologies? Don't we already have variable fan drives? Don't we already have green building design technique? Like, yeah, we have literally all of these. Do we even have sustainable finance and ways to direct capital more effectively to environment? We have all of these things. We do not need new widgets. We need transparency and measurement. The capital markets will do a lot of the work from there.
And we just need to do it, right? We need to execute on all the stuff we already have.
Get it to scale. Get it to scale.
Versus trying to find the new unicorn. So,
totally.
Well, hey, Matt, it was a pleasure having you on. Where can people find you? Where can they find out more about Measurabl? And where can they find more about your book?
Sweet. All the above are obviously at measurabl.com. Just don't forget to drop the E. We don't use the E, measurabl.com. And then I spend my time on LinkedIn, so you'll see me there.
Awesome, man. Well, it was a pleasure having you on the show. Thanks a lot, man.
Yeah, man. See you, Ryan.